I've never been straight with anybody, so I'm going to tell you something that's true. I hate my family. My older sister moved to America with hardly a goodbye. My dad's dead, and I always hoped my mom would follow him. Well, one day she did. She left behind a crap load of money and a 6-bedroom house outside the city with a stream running beside it. My dad had left her a $2 million fortune, enough for her to live on with change, especially since she was too much of a skinflint to spend any of it. Now she was dead, and the house and money sat there. I didn't expect to see a penny. Me and Mom had always hated each other. We didn't have little spats, we had a full-on feud. Growing up, my cheeks would always be red from where she'd slap me. Sometimes she did it backhand and cut my face with her engagement ring. Yeah, we hated each other. Never got better when I matured and she didn't mellow with old age, she just got more and more spiteful. By the time she died, we'd gone 5 years, 6 months, and 3 days without speaking. To some extent, I sympathized with her. She'd had a hard life. My dad spent 4 nights a week out of the marital bed and used to call her ugly and wouldn't let her have self-esteem. It was a depressing marriage. Then there was my younger sister. She was 10 years my junior, and from the minute she was born, she was the favorite, always getting the hugs Mom never gave me. I don't want to whine, but I resented it, and I was cruel to her. Called my mother's side getting through. That changed when my sister had her accident. She fell 20 feet out of a maple tree and thumped her head on the ground. They said when they found her, blood trickled out of her ears, and she was already comatose. She's never woken up. I told you I didn't expect a penny from the will, so you can imagine my surprise when our family lawyer told me that I was the sole heir. Yep, he was surprised too. $2 million and a 6-bedroom house were mine, but on one condition. I had to move in and become my sister's sole caretaker. Caring for a coma victim isn't hard, to be honest. You just have to listen for irregular beeps on the machines that they have her hooked up to. She had nurses who came in once a day to check on everything, so I didn't have to do a thing, and I was a millionaire for it. But I hated being in the same house as her. She's my sister and all, but after so long in a coma, you're already dead. That, coupled with how she looked, meant I couldn't see her as my sister. She was a woman, technically, but she never developed, so she was more like a freakishly tall child. Her bones stuck out, her skin was gray, and her face had the absent look of a corpse. At the beginning, it was unnerving, sleeping in the room next to her. I'd lie in bed trying to sleep, but all I could think about was her on the other side of the wall, immobile and mute. One night, she scared the hell out of me. I was stretched out on my bed, lights off, house as silent as ever, and I heard a bang from my sister's room, and something clattered to the floor. I thought she'd fallen out of bed, like maybe the nurse had left her in a funny position. I ran to her room, but she was laid down, like always, face staring absently at the ceiling. On the other side of the room, a photo frame was on the floor. A few nights later, the nurse called in sick, so I checked on my sister myself. I made sure she was nowhere near the edge of the bed. I'd gotten paranoid and switched off the light. It was too early to go to bed, so I had a few drinks. The thing about my bladder is it only acts up when I'm in bed. And sure enough, as soon as I tried to go to sleep that night, I had an urge to go to the toilet. On the way there, I noticed my sister's door slightly ajar. I probably hadn't closed it right, but after the photo frame incident, I thought I'd better check. Everything seemed fine, but when I looked at my sister, I was sure she was wearing a different gown. I wouldn't bet my dead mom's house on it, and you write that kind of thing off, don't you? I don't know, must have been a trick of the brain. That explanation satisfied me, and I slept for a few hours. But the next day had me doubting myself again. The nurse was well enough to visit the next night, and she did the usual checks. Before she left, she grabbed me for a word. "I'm sorry about last night," she said. "It was short notice, but you did a great job." It was nothing," I said. "No, you were great. I didn't think you'd change your clothes and everything." That got my attention. I didn't press it because the nurse would never believe me, but you can bet I didn't sleep easy from then on. Every reasonable explanation ran through my head. Did I change them and forget? Was the nurse mistaken? I didn't have a clue. All I know is that I never went into my sister's room if I could avoid it. A few weeks later, I didn't have a choice. The machines she's hooked up to have alarms, and one night they started making a racket. I got my ass into her room as quick as I could, and as soon as I did, the alarm stopped. It was a big relief. Then, I looked at my sister's face. Her mouth was wide open, an enormous cavity aimed at the ceiling, the corners of her lips crooked. They said it was just a reflex, but as much as I wanted to buy it, I still moved my bedroom to the other side of the house, as far away as I could get. I'd hear noises every night, scaring the crap out of me every time. I lost sleep, and I was a stressed out wreck. As pathetic as it sounds, I didn't dare go check on her. And then something happened that made me move out of the house. It was a rare night where I felt like I was going to get some sleep. I was in that in-between stage, where you're on the edge of sleep, but not quite there yet. Then, my bedroom door opened and banged shut. It shook me straight out of drowsiness, and I sat up in bed. I could feel something in the room with me. It wasn't right. On the floor beside me, lit in the moonlight, was my sister, her body rigid and her mouth wide open, her face pointed at mine.